a chance to figure out how to use photos in Illustrator, I'm going to go over some transparency effects that you can use with those photos and also with basic shapes. So let's go ahead and open up Illustrator. Let's open up a new document. Okay, so there's something called transparency and also transparency effects, and this is this option right here. If you can't find it on your panel, you can always go to Window and Transparency and it'll pop up for you. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's create some basic shapes. Let's create some pretty bold colored shapes so I can kind of show you. Let's get rid of the stroke. We're just going to have the fill. And let's copy and paste a couple of circles here. Okay, let's make those some different wide variety of colors. Let's do green. And let's do like a light blue. So let's go ahead and align these shapes. Okay, so we have these three circles. Now I have our transparency, so what we can do to make something transparent, you decrease the opacity. So let's go ahead and select this yellow. Let's take a little bit of the green out of that yellow so it's not as bad. Okay. Okay, so now let's go ahead and select this circle and go to opacity. Let's do 50% opacity. Now if we go put this shape over this other shape and bring it to the front, you notice that opacity, you can kind of see through the object. Let's also make this 50%. And so you can kind of see how you can overlay and create different logos that way. So arrange, send that to the back. Another way, let's go ahead and make these all 100% opacity again. Let's make this a different color. Make this like hot pink or something. Okay, so one way to kind of have all of these blend in is, let's go ahead and select them all, and you can play around with all these transparency blending modes. So right now it's set on normal. Everything's a solid color. Everything's 100% visible. There's something called overlay. If you click on overlay, you can see how whenever this shape overlays this shape, it creates kind of a different color or a blending. So you can see a lot of modern logos kind of have that effect. So you can really play around with this and create some really interesting things. So let's play around color dodge. That's going to kind of make decrease the color in the sections where it overlaps. Notice that. These are fun to play around with, so I would just pause the video, create a few shapes, overlap those shapes, and see what kind of blending mode, what the different blending modes does to those shapes. Hue, it's going to change the hue when it overlaps. Soft light, this could do a nice subtle change right there, nice blending, it's not as harsh. Also hard light, multiply, and then color burn. You kind of see lots of different ways you can experiment there. So how can we do that with photos? Let's create a quick little ad here using a photo that I downloaded from Pexels. So we're just going to go ahead and open up Illustrator, open this up in Illustrator and drag it over. Just like we did in the last video. Zoom out, hold down Shift. Let's scale that down perfectly. Okay, so we're going to create an ad. Our photo is going to be featured on the top. Let's go ahead and extend that past the artboard a little bit. I want to zoom in on that coffee pot, or that coffee mug. I'm going to do a couple of white boxes, just to kind of visually cut that excess outside of the artboard off. Kind of helps my eye, that's all it's for. It's not for the design at all. Okay, let's do like a dark bottom. Let's actually take the eyedrop tool and let's select the blue out of this image. That'll kind of make it blend in nicely. So let's kind of click around and we find a color we like. I really like maybe that color right there. This is kind of the basic blocking of our ad. So let's say I want to make this photo kind of do some different blending modes or opacity modes with this. So let's say I want to extend this all the way up. I really like this blue color. And let's send this all the way to the back, so it's the background. So let's select our image on top, and let's, if you decrease the opacity all the way down, you could make it kind of more of a watermark type thing. You can also do this with logos. That's done a lot when you place a logo on the background and you decrease the opacity to kind of give it a watermark feel. So we could do that as well. Let's see, what if I played around with some blending modes here? So if I did overlay, it'll kind of overlay it over the blue to give it the whole photo a nice blue hue to it. Soft light's usually one of my favorites. Of course, you could do the opacity on these blending modes as well to get the desired effect. Let's say I want to make this much darker, have more of a contrast, or lighter. Lots of ways we can experiment. I kind of like my original blue, so let me do Command Z, and get back out. Let's say I want to have this normal. So let's bring this image. I kind of like the original image in color. Let's say I want to have a watermark logo at the bottom. Let me bring in a logo here. Let's bring in my main logo here. Let's take this, bring it together. I'm actually going to right click and group it. I'm going to hold shift so I can scale it down without messing up the size. Put it right here in the background. Make it a little bit bigger so you can see the watermark. I'm actually going to go to Object. Let's see what I'm going to do. I'm going to do Edit Colors, and I'm going to convert this to grayscale. So a lot of times when you do a watermark, you don't want any other different colors to interfere with your watermark. So what I usually do is I convert it to grayscale, and then I just scale it back. So you can kind of just see the logo right there. Sometimes you could play around with overlay. Sometimes it doesn't work. It depends on the color of the logo you're working with. Sometimes blending modes just don't work out for specific items. So that's why there's opacity. So let's go to make that 10%, just so you can see the logo right there. Of course, we're going to feature a full colored logo. Much smaller in the corner. And the contact information right nearby. So we can do lots of things with this. So let's see, let's make a triangle. Let's make this green. And let's bring that photo right back in here. Actually, let's bring a different photo, one from our last video. Let's bring the same photo back in. Let's do a nice zoomed in shot of the coffee. So what we're going to do is, this is the very topmost layer, and I'm going to do a blending mode called overlay. And notice how it overlays over these different colors in a different way. So this overlays and brings out all the blues, and this overlays and brings out all the greens. So now this is the top photo. So I want to select this green square underneath. What's a layer below the photo that's on top? So let me right click, select. You're going to select the next object below, which is going to be that green triangle. So let's make that a different color. Let's make that red or hot pink, just to kind of show you an example. So you can see some kind of neat things that you can do with blending modes and photos. So this is set on overlay, it's also color burn. Some of these uglier than others. See, that doesn't look great, but if we do lower the opacity, kind of has a neat effect. Soft light, which I think I like the best. I use soft light a lot. And so then you can have your ad featured. You can also shift this over, create another variety of shapes. Let's say we want to create a couple of squares here, just to kind of show you the effect. Let's make that a different color. Let's bring our photo back over, which is set to soft light. I'm going to drag it over. It's the very top layer. Actually, we created 2 new layers, so those are on the top. So let's right-click and bring our photo to the front. So you can see the different effects. Let's do overlay that it has. Of course, you could do this with photos as well, where you feature, maybe you crop a face and it's just the one overlay of pink, and then you could do the same thing with green. It has a really nice effect. It's kind of like, let's see if I can find it. This is an ad I did that used some transparency or some blending effects. Let's go ahead and open this up in Illustrator. So you can see how I took this black and white photography right here, and I put the overlay blending mode on top of these colored block boxes. And you can kind of see how it created a really nice effect there. Kind of more of a unified color on those certain blocks of text. That's blending mode. Of course, you can do a lot more with shapes without photos. In terms of, let's see, just do a square. You got a different color. Highlight both. Let's do overlay. So there you go. Create some really neat logos and other stuff. So just go ahead and experiment for a little while and have some fun.